Pope Francis' highly anticipated encyclical was leaked before the scheduled June 18th release date, and in it he names climate change as the greatest threat to humanity. He also calls for reduction of the population and creation of a new global political authority to save mankind from disaster by overseeing the reduction of pollution and the development of poor countries and regions. This sounds suspiciously like the new Sustainable Development Agenda about to be unveiled at the UN in September. The Pope is scheduled to give the initial speech at the conference on what is becoming known as Agenda 21 on steroids. This new program addresses more than the environment. It also deals with poverty, education, agriculture, and gender equality. In addition, he's scheduled to meet with Obama and address the U.S. Congress during his visit. The timing of this encyclical isn't accidental. The Guardian reported that the purpose was to ensure maximum public impact before the UN conference. Francis hopes to add moral authority to the scientific arguments about the need for a global agreement to deal with climate change. The Vatican has hired experts to help craft their new agenda, and one of them, John Schellenhuber, is a German professor who earlier had stated that the planet is overpopulated by at least 6 billion people. This all sounds very much like the new 10 Commandments on the Georgia Guidestones, and raises questions about what moral authority the Vatican is following. While the Pope won't be calling for such a drastic reduction, the fact that Schellenhuber is his primary advisor and will stand beside him at the encyclical's release is prompting some to ask whether this is really about saving the planet or about increasing the political power of the Vatican. He also will call for lifestyle changes and reduction of energy consumption to avert unprecedented destruction of the ecosystem. It's a strange focus for the papacy, especially since there hasn't been any sign of global warming for over a decade.
Speaking at the UN Summit for the adoption of the post-2015 Development Agenda, UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon termed the 2030 Agenda as a to-do list. He called upon countries to act in solidarity, rising above national interests to achieve these goals.
We need action from everyone, everywhere. 17 Sustainable Development Goals are our guide. They are a to-do list for people and planet and the blueprint for success. To achieve these new global goals, we will need your high-level political commitment. We will need a renewed global partnership. Governments agreed on a visionary charter dedicated to we the peoples. The agenda you are adopting today advances the goals of the Charter. It embodies the aspirations of people everywhere for lives of peace, security, and dignity on a healthy planet. Let us today pledge to light the path to this transformative vision. I count on your strong leadership and commitment.
UN Secretary-General also called the current summit a defining moment in human history that defines the vision for a better world with an aim to end poverty in all its forms.
We have reached a defining moment in human history. The people of the world have asked us to shine a light on a future of promise and opportunity. Member states have responded with 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. The new agenda is a promise by leaders to all people everywhere. It's a universal, integrated, and transformative vision for a better world. It's an agenda for people to end poverty in all its forms. An agenda for the planet, our common home. An agenda for shared prosperity.
Signore, a tutti ci ha redenti con il sangue di Cristo. Tutti, non The commandment that Jesus gave to us is to do good. Therefore, violence in the name of religion is not legitimate. And redemption concerns everyone, not just those who believe in Jesus, said Pope Francis in his homily at Morning Mass Wednesday. The Pope said, "The Lord redeemed all of us, not just Catholics, with the blood of Christ, everyone, even atheists. And this blood makes us first-class children of God. We are created children in the likeness of God, and the blood of Christ has redeemed us all." Pope Francis said this means we all have the duty to do good. This commandment for everyone to do good, he said, is a beautiful path towards peace. If we, each doing our own part, do good to others, then slowly, gently, little by little, we can build that culture of encounter which we need so much. We must meet one another doing good. And to those who say, "But Father, I don't believe, I am an atheist," Pope Francis concluded, we must still do good to build this culture of encounter.
Hello friends, Pastor Doug Batchelor. I want to welcome you to another Amazing Facts News Flash, and this is going to be one for the books. Now, we don't do this because every time the Pope does something, we're supposed to flinch and say the sky is falling. But Jesus told us that if we're to look at the sky and tell when the weather's changing, that we should also be able to look at the panorama of prophecy and see the signs of the times. During the Pope's Wednesday morning, August 12th radio address from the Vatican, he has totally come out of the closet regarding how he feels about Sunday keeping and how it plays in his agenda in the next couple of months. In fact, the Pope said that Sunday keeping is so sacred it is the conduit for every grace of Christ. Keep in mind, this comes on the heels of the Pope's encyclical he delivered in June on saving the planet, where he also said Sunday keeping is a way to preserve the environment. The Pope's comments during the radio address were not very long, so to be fair, we're going to play the whole thing for you here on the screen. Be patient with me if I pause every now and then and interject a few thoughts. We begin now a series of catechesis. A catechesis is a Catholic teaching. It's an official teaching when it comes from the Pope that people understand, whether children or adults, prior to induction or baptism within the Church. On three facets of family life: celebration, work, and prayer. These are the same three facets on family life that the Pope will highlight during his meetings in Philadelphia in September. Celebration is sort of a code word that the Pope is using in this radio address to talk about Sunday. You'll see for yourself as I read on. Let us turn first to celebration, which, as we see from the story of creation, are the invention of God, who on the seventh day rested from his work. All right, no question now he's making an allusion to the seventh day Sabbath. But he's not talking about Saturday. They're talking about the Roman Sunday. It is God himself who teaches us the importance of dedicating time to contemplating and enjoying the fruits of our labors. Actually, friends, there's really nowhere in the Bible we're told the Sabbath is a time for us to contemplate our labors. It's a time for us to contemplate God. Not only in our employment or profession, but through every action by which we, as men and women, cooperate in God's creative work, even in times of difficulty. In the workplace, too, we celebrate a birthday, a marriage, a new baby, a farewell, or a welcome. True moments of celebration make us pause from our work because they remind us that we are made in the image and the likeness of God, who is not a slave to work, but the Lord of work. Actually, Jesus says that the Son of Man is also the Lord of the Sabbath in Mark chapter 2, verse 28. So we must never be slaves to work, but rather its master. Yet we know that millions of men and women, even children, are slaves to work. This is true. The obsession with economic profit and technical efficiency puts the human rhythms of life at risk. I would agree with that as well. People get so busy with life and work that we forget about the purpose of life. This is really what makes the Pope's comments so insidious. He says a lot of good, true things. Moments of rest, especially on Sunday, are sacred. Now, I've underlined that. He says the time Sunday is sacred. That's called Sunday sacredness. Because in them we find God. It's in the sacred moments of Sunday we find God. According to my Bible, it says that Saturday is the holy time. It's the time that God has set aside as sacred. I'm reading on. The Sunday Eucharist brings to our celebrations every grace of Jesus Christ. Now notice there, he's making a very clear connection between the word celebration and Sunday. There's no question about what this celebration emphasis is talking about when he comes to Philadelphia. And this is, when the Pope gives a catechesis, this is an official teaching of the Church. His presence, His love, and His sacrifice, His forming us into a community, and His way of being with us, this is all coming to us through the conduit of the celebration of Sunday sacredness. That's what he's saying. Everything is transfigured by His grace. Work, family, the joys and trials of each day, even our sufferings and death. And then Pope Francis concludes with a prayer. May we always recognize the family as the privileged place to understand, guide, and sustain the gifts which arise from our celebrations, especially the Sunday Eucharist. This is a very clear call to remember Sunday as sacred. And I also think it's interesting that 3 times he sets it up at the beginning, talks about the seventh-day Sabbath, and then he concludes by 3 times talking about Sunday, Sunday, Sunday. It almost is a mere opposite of what happens there in Genesis chapter 2, where God talks about the Sabbath, and he says 3 times, the seventh day, the seventh day, the seventh day. Well, there you have it, friends. The Pope now has announced, he's making it very clear that these 3 components are going to be a big part of his agenda when he meets regarding the family in Philadelphia this September. Talking about celebration, work is related to the Sabbath, and prayer is related to the Sabbath. He'll probably tie all these things together. But this is going to be a platform for pushing Sunday sacredness. We knew these things were going to happen. Now, just in case you think I'm overstating this, Vatican Radio also commented on the Pope's catechesis, and I want to read their comments. Pope Francis concluded his reflection with a focus on the need to recover attunements to the rhythms of life, which are found most especially in the sense of the sacred, that at once draws to and flows from Sunday, the day of rest. The Bible doesn't say Sunday is the holy day, the day of rest. It says it's the Sabbath day, the seventh day, commonly known as Saturday. This is monumental for Sabbath-keeping Christians and Jews who have always believed the day is coming when a confederation of religious powers will enforce Sunday keeping. This is a very prominent step in that direction. In fact, friends, if I was going to write this myself as a Hollywood script, I couldn't write it better than it's playing out in reality right now. They go on to say, moments of rest, especially on Sunday, are sacred because in them we find God. So I ask you, friends, if you're the leader of the Catholic Church and you're trying to build an international confederacy of Christians, and many of them are in secular countries, and present arguments that everybody could accept for Sunday keeping, what better arguments could you present than family unity, the environmental arguments, the financial arguments? It's a masterpiece. So at this stage, if there was some international catastrophe, if there's some war that develops between radical Islam and Christianity, if there's an economic meltdown, or if there's some natural disaster, to whom do you think the world is going to turn for spiritual leadership? And who is going to be willing at this point to step into the spotlight as that leader? You only get 2 guesses. Friends, in conclusion, I'd like to remind you that seeing the final prophecies unfold and even knowing what they mean is not going to save anybody. The devil knows that his time is short. It won't save him. The only thing that is going to save us is a personal relationship with Jesus. And if these prophecies wake us up and it becomes a catalyst for us surrendering our hearts to the Lord, well, that's why we do these videos. With that, we want to make some more information available. And we're going to go out on a limb over and above anything we've ever done before. Amazing Facts spent 2 years developing a prophecy video that lays out in great detail the very things that are happening right now. It's called The Bride, the Beast, and Babylon. It's a product that we sell. But for a limited time, we're going to make that entire video available for free.
Nella Chiesa non esiste il fai da te, non esistono battitori liberi. Quante volte Papa Benedetto ha descritto la Chiesa come un noi ecclesiale. Talvolta capita di sentire qualcuno dire io credo in Dio, credo in Gesù, ma la Chiesa non mi interessa. Quante volte abbiamo sentito questo? Questo non va. C'è chi ritiene di poter avere un rapporto personale, diretto, immediato con Gesù Cristo, al di fuori della comunione e della meditazione della Chiesa. Sono tentazioni pericolose, sono tentazioni dannose.
Pope Francis welcomed an interreligious group from Argentina made up of 15 Jews, 15 Muslims, and 15 Christians. They were on their way back from a pilgrimage to the Holy Land. The Pope greeted each person, some of whom he already knew from his time as Archbishop of Buenos Aires. With such a familiar environment, the Pope improvised a speech focused on brotherhood. He cited Argentina as a good example since immigration forced groups to coexist.
La mayoría sabemos convivir, nos resulta más fácil y es un mensaje, ¿no? Un mensaje de que tenemos el mismo Padre en el cielo. El mismo Padre acá también, Abraham.
Jakari Jackson for Infowars.com reporting in Philadelphia. This is the last day of the Pope's visit. Now, since he's been here, he's said and done a lot of things. But the thing that stuck out to me the most is something he said during, I guess it was a mass, where he came out and said that the life of Jesus ultimately ended in failure, in the failure on the cross. I have the transcript here. This is reported by ABC News, and it says in part, "The cross shows us a different way of measuring success. Ours is to plant the seed. God sees the fruit of our labors, and if at times our efforts and work seem to fail and not produce fruit, we need to remember that we are followers of Jesus Christ, and his life, humanly speaking, ended in failure, the failure of the cross." Then he went on to talk about the dangers of being comfortable with surroundings and things such as that, which is a whole nother topic in and of itself. But he says the failure of Jesus, the failure of the cross, even though the Bible clearly states that Jesus knew what was going to happen to him, far as the cross was concerned, how he is going to lay his life down. He even said, "Lord, if it is your will, take this bitter cup from me, but not your will, but not my will, your will be done." And particularly we know this when we look at John 17 and 18. "Therefore doth my Father love me, because I laid my life down, that I might take it again. No man taketh it from me, but I lay it down myself." Which is to say, nobody took his life from him on the cross. He laid it down willingly. He knew what was going to happen to him. So to say that his life in general, the cross in particular, was a failure is something I'm very disappointed to see from a supposed spiritual leader. And there are many other things I could talk about as far as the Pope, but this is something, a glaring thing that stuck out to me. So anybody who claims to be a follower of Christ, I'm surprised if they're not as shocked and appalled by this as I am. I found it to be very disturbing and a very sour note to have while he was here in the United States of America. You can find more reports on Infowars.com.
Hey, Alex and Leo, check this out. When the Pope spoke before the United Nations, he says, "I come in my own name and in the name of the Catholic community." Well, check out John 5:43. "I am come in my Father's name, and you receive me not. If another shall come in his own name, him you will receive."
Whoa, exactly. He's like following stuff I've read in like serious, FBI criminology reports about Satanism. What the real Satanists do is they blaspheme and change everything that's key in the Bible. So he says Christ failed at the cross. The cross is a failure.
The Secretary General of the United Nations has invited the Pope to address this distinguished assembly of nations. In my own name and that of the entire Catholic community.
Repeat that again.
Yes, the very first remarks out of his mouth, the translator will say it. I flipped out, Alex. He says, I come to you in my own name, in the name of the Catholic community. He did not come in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. I never saw him do the sign of the cross while he was here, any of that stuff. This guy is an imposter.
Here it is. Thank you for your kind words once again, following a tradition which I feel honored, the Secretary General of the United Nations, the Pope, to address the distinguished Assembly of Nations in my own name and that of the entire Catholic community. Wow, so he said in my name, not in Christ's name.
I am come in my Father's name, and you receive me not. If another shall come in his own name, him you will receive.
The Secretary General of the United Nations has invited the Pope to address this distinguished Assembly of Nations. In my own name and that of the entire Catholic community.
Well, I hope it doesn't get to the point of the mark of the beast being the microchip, because at that point, you know, I mean, I will, of course, say that everything that's been prophesied is turning out to be true and is dramatically in front of our eyes right now. So we have to pray. Like you said at the beginning of the show, people need to pray for us. I mean, when the Pope went out there the first time and he asked people to pray for him, that was completely wrong, because the church should have enough power to actually give his own blessings to the people, not want people to pray. But he's continuing to say that. He always say, pray for me, pray for me. He's getting
that means pray to him.
Yeah, pray to him. That's what, it's not ad majori Dei gloriam, that's the motto of the Jesuits, but it's ad majori Dei of him, basically to the glory of himself, that he's going to the Castros in Cuba, coming to the U.S.
Well, he told Boehner that. I mean, I know if you're in trouble, ask folks to pray for you. I do that too, but yeah, he's supposed to be up there as the church leader saying God's blessing you, not I need the blessing.
But he's taking in that energy because he's a vampire. And that's a Satan. That's satanic for you. I mean, that's Satanism, to take the energy and to, you see, there is a concept which maybe you'll not be familiar with, but I want to introduce you to, is the concept of egregor. Have you ever heard of it?
Yes.
It is the concept of egregor is very important because a number of people together form a thought, and this thought becomes an egregor, an entity. Now, the egregor of the Catholic Church is one of the most powerful, being more than 1 billion people who follow this church.
It's a giant mob psychology.
And of course, if he wants them to pray for him, he's just getting this energy for him. He's not releasing anything to the people like the old popes used to bless people, be caring towards the others. And now he said he wants to pray for me, pray because I'm doing this, I have to do it. It's necessary. It's like he's really trapped by his own, his own role in the New World Order.
Well, he tries to act humble, but you look at him, he is seething with power.
Well, if sometimes you spot him out of camera, you can really see his real face, and his real look is completely different from what then, he shows on camera. He's a great actor.
Let's go to David Knight. We'll come back to the next segment with him, then Jakari Jackson at the bottom of the hour. They've been filing a bunch of amazing reports in New York. The video reports are up on Infowars.com. David Knight, thank you for joining us.
David Knight for Infowars.com. I'm here at Ground Zero, the 9/11 Museum. The Pope spoke here earlier. Actually, it was a world religion ceremony. But before we talk about that, Alex, I want to talk about what happened at the UN this morning. At the UN, as part of his speech, one of the things that he said was that the environment has rights. That's a quote. The environment has rights.
And he's going to speak for him. That's the classic takeover.
That's right. That's right. And so what he's selling there is essentially Gaia religion, Gaia theory that we've seen. Many people push for the Earth Firsters, that agenda. Many people look at this, whether they're Catholic, or I've gotten a lot of tweetbacks from people saying, well, I agree with the Pope, and I'm not a Catholic, I'm an atheist. I think what he's doing is great. Those people need to understand that this is not a moral case that's being made. This is a political takeover. And as evidence of that, Alex, the Chinese president met with Obama right after the Pope left in Washington yesterday. Today, they're releasing an agenda that the U.S. and China have agreed on cap and trade. This is all falling into place. That's the next step, just like the TPP. And you can see the parallel structure with the TPP as well. The United States in the center, enacting a trans-Pacific agreement, enacting a transatlantic agreement. At the same time, we are the spine on which they attach these two wings, bringing these things together in the next step towards global governance. But they're also doing it with the climate change agenda, the cap and trade agenda. Because what they're going to do is they're going to cap and tax you. They're going to control your energy uses. And you can see in this particular instance, we've got the Chinese president, the U.S. president, and essentially the cultural leader of Europe. There's not a strong central leader in Europe that could speak for all of Europe. So they bring in the Pope, and with the added advantage, Alex, that he can make a moral case.
That's right. He's there to cement it all together. They're making their full push right now for open planetary government. Excellent job breaking it down. Come back more, David. I'll be back this Sunday, Lord willing, 4 to 6 p.m. with a Sunday transmission. I'll be doing some Facebook mentions as well tonight and tomorrow, right through Sunday, on our big Facebook channel. David Knight's our guest. Jakari Jackson's also coming up. Jakari, I hope, can recap some of the amazing video reports they've been shooting on a host of issues. So really glad you guys are there covering it. I want to get back into this moment of world government, but separate from that, David, you've come down here to Texas, your wife, your family, you're doing a great job. You know, I've told you about backup plans. If they try to come after me, I've kept you out of the whole business end of things for you and Paul Watson to fill my shoes. If they kill me or if they set me up, long before this, I knew stuff was going on. But I'm sure you may have read this morning and perhaps seen a video where Source, White House has FBI task force investigating InfoWars. I mean, they've got all these White House-run media outlets saying, you know, it's time to arrest me and stuff. So this just, and it's not just, I'm just a canary in the coal mine. They're going after people across the board, which shows we have power, which shows we're having an effect, which shows they need to not have any opposition to execute what they're about to do. It's a very reckless move. It's not like there hasn't been corruption in government before in this country, but it was smart enough to not go after vocal opposition in the middle of the sunny day. This is really getting to crazy town. Your take, David Knight.
Well, Alex, that's very true. As I was listening to the press conference where John Boehner resigned, and again, that's something that we've been pushing really hard for. He tried to put a brave face on it. One of the reporters said, if you don't have anybody following you, you're not a leader, you're just somebody taking a walk. And that's the key. That's what we have to understand. When I look at all the people following the Pope,
the government has a 9% approval rating. We have a high, exactly, it's illegitimate. Go ahead, sorry.
Well, when I look at all these people following the Pope, to me, the big story is not the prepared speeches that the Pope is making. Yes, it's important that he's selling nonsense that the environment has rights. It would be laughable if we didn't know that that was going to be taken literally and used against us. But the thing that gives him power are the people that follow him, not knowing what the agenda is about. And so that's our task, Alex, is to tell people what's behind this, to give them a broader perspective. If you want to understand what this is about in the immediate future, it's about climate change. That's the next governance. And you can see that by the Chinese president coming with Obama and the Pope at the same time, going to the UN, going to Congress, trying to push this through. They could not get it done last time because the GOP was able to push back and say, look, you can't put restrictions on us that China's not going to take. It's not going to, you don't talk to me about global warming, about a global climate issue if you're only going to put this selectively on the developed nations. So they learned their lesson. They bided their time. They're back
and they've got the big third world leader. The Pope is the leader of the third world, that mainly Catholic in the third world. They've now got him there to sucker them in to the eugenics, extermination, austerity movement, which will kill 1 billion people. Lord Monckton's numbers show it. And that's why I get so angry at him. He knows full well this is an exterminist agenda.
Exactly. Let me read you what Mother Jones said, because they're not Catholic. They're not looking at this with the starry eyes of someone who's projecting onto the Pope what they would like it to be. They said something big and strange is happening in the U.S. this week. Obama, the Pope, and the President of China are teaming up to save the world. No, they're teaming up to rule the world. That's precisely what this is about, and they're doing it for the people behind the scenes. That's the agenda that you need to understand. It's being sold as being compassionate. It's being sold.
And we've got the Ford Foundation, a fake liberal publication, lauding a foreign communist leader, the Pope, and the President combining forces to save us when we know it's all about tyranny.
Yes. And, of course, all of them are on the same page when it comes to a redistribution of wealth, all the money in the hands of a few people. The Chinese government was communist when it suited them. Now they're a group of fascists, and that's really what this is. There's not really any difference when you get down to it in the end game. There's no difference between fascism and communism. It's a small elite cabal that is running everything, and they can just use whatever label they want. People have to get beyond labels. They have to get beyond personality. That's what concerns me so much, Alex, about the GOP election, when I see everybody falling in love with personality, or on the Democrat side, as we saw with Obama 8 years ago. We need to look at the agenda of these people. We need to vet them carefully, and we need to stop putting all of our hopes on some distant high ruler that is going to save us in this life, and we need to work at the local level. Now, today he was at the 9/11 Memorial Museum here. They had a multi-religion service that's now over. But Alex, as we were watching that, he was saying, and all of these different religious leaders were saying, every life is valuable, and all religions take all these lives as indispensable.
Well, the key is they get to speak. They get to speak for the environment and the, quote, all religions working together in freedom. And then they let radical Islam run wild, but then arrest Christians for free speech. Stay there, David. I want you to finish up. Then we're going to go to Jakari Jackson and get his take. He's been filing amazing reports. You were getting into this epic moment where they push the entire eugenics, transhumanist, animal rights movement that isn't about animal rights, but about government taking human liberty away in the name of animals, the end of private property. I mean, this is all happening with this fabulously rich Pope and Obama and the Chinese president lecturing everyone on austerity as they get ready to screw the people. In the past, governments tried to create prosperity to be popular. Now they sell us on how ugly we are and how great it is to be poor. This is truly a 1984 society, a world of being trampled and being trampled upon and trampling.
Exactly, Alex. They're telling you that they're going to stand for the environment, that the environment has rights, that animals have rights. This is the path to tyranny. They're going to be the ones who tell you how to protect the environment, how to protect the rights. It's just a beard. And of course, today what we saw was essentially a world religion ceremony. Look, I know a lot of people look at this and they say, isn't it great that all these different religions could come together and agree that 9/11 was a bad thing? And I say, yes, it is. But that's not the way you get religious tolerance, is by having a one world religion that says that we all worship the same God. That is, if you believe that, you're a fool. If you tell people that, you're a deceiver. The way to have tolerance of people is by something called the First Amendment. We solved that problem here in America once upon a time. We're about to undo that again, because if you have a one world religion, there will be no tolerance for your religion. If it's
we already see Christians being targeted under this liberal one world religion garbage.
Yes.
The only religion being targeted is true Christianity.
And let me tell you, the Pope is very concerned about the Muslims who died as part of the Hajj, in Saudi Arabia, and there were over 700 people who died in a stampede. That's the 7th incident, according to my count, since 1990. Over 3,000 people have died doing that. So it's happening over and over and over again. Yet the Pope will not criticize Islam for that. Do you think if there were 3,000 people shot in New York City by gunmen, you think he'd have something to say about that? He would blame the gun. He'd blame the gun culture. He's not blaming Islam or the Muslim culture for this repeated stampeding and death. It's just what we're seeing here today with the one world religion. And I got to say,
what is behind the stampeding? I mean, isn't it just Mecca's letting too many people in? The Saudis are letting too many people into that site in Medina?
They have a ceremony, the stoning of Satan, and it gets them worked up into a fury, and they have people get stampeded because they start running over each other. It's a massive crowd, and just the lack of control. But I want to say this in terms of the preciousness of each life, because we heard that from all the different leaders of all these different religions today. If they really believe that, they would be standing at an abortion clinic, because there are more children that are killed each day with an abortion than there were people who died here on 9/11. We have a 9/11 every day at abortion clinics, but this Pope can't be bothered to say that. When I was standing, taking pictures, we got the motorcade coming in earlier this morning at the UN, I heard people talking around me, and one of them said, this guy is great. Every time this Pope talks, he makes people understand the plight of those who have less than them, and he did a great job by not feeding the right-wing pro-lifers You understand that? Feel sorry for people because they don't have as much money as you do, but don't feel sorry for them because they're having their life taken. That's the kind of calculus.
Well, it's their religion. It's their religion.
Yes.
This is what they're pushing.
Yes.
And he's spouting classical Marxism, and then now all these leftists just love the Pope. See, they love a religion that pushes their idea because they're in a religion of collectivism that ends free will and ends language and makes you adopt their orthodox view of the world.
Yes, absolutely. He had one other thing, too, I want to tell you, Alex, and that was when he met privately with the clergy. I believe it was a private meeting in Washington that this quote came out of. But he was talking to the church leaders that were there. And this is what he had to say to them. He said, many of you have suffered greatly in the not-too-distant past by having to bear the shame of some of your brothers who harmed and scandalized the church in the most vulnerable of her members. Did you catch that? The only thing he really had to say about the pedophile controversy within the Roman Catholic Church was, I'm sorry that some of you were embarrassed by being connected with that. He doesn't talk about the heinousness of this. And Alex, when I look at the way
he didn't personalize it, he just said, I'm sorry, it embarrassed our thing.
Yes, it embarrassed our institution. I'm sorry because you're part of the institution. But just like we see with the police, they don't purge the evildoers out of their midst. That is how you embrace corruption. That's how you propagate corruption. And I thought it was absolutely outrageous that that's the only thing that we've seen of that. If you want to talk about how you are there to help the children, then do something to help the children. Stop people from killing them and selling their baby parts, and stop people from molesting them sexually. Then we can have a conversation about what else you want to do to protect the children. But people need to understand the thousands, tens of thousands of people, whatever, that are here, they need to understand that this moral high ground that he has is simply a mask, a facade for a globalist agenda so they can rule the world. And you can see that with the confluence of the Pope and the Chinese president and Obama coming together on this next step of global governance.
It's a Pope joins forces with Obama and Communist China to take over the world. This is a true axis of eugenics, a true axis of destroying any type of industrialization, clean industrialization around the world. Thank you so much, David Knight.
Well, thank you, Alex.
Jakari Jackson, you got cut off by the break, my compadre. Just as a person, what do you make of this? I mean, the media has gone from attacking Catholics most of the time because they were conservative to just drooling over this guy. I mean, are you going to break down and cry if you see him?
Oh, absolutely not, Alex. Like Dave was talking about the other day, how we were watching Fox News, and they just would not say anything negative about the Pope. And I'm not saying you have to attack the guy, but just Catholicism, you know, everybody, they had all these Catholics on to talk about how great it is. And like I said, it's not bashing Catholics. It's just like this one singular, we will not say anything negative about this guy. You know, just like they'll say something negative about Obama.
Yeah, don't say anything about Jim Jones. It's a cult. I mean, would you agree that clearly he's becoming a cult leader?
I say the way people react to him is a very cultish way. Like I said, they will not criticize the man for any reason. They won't talk about the private planes or the Vatican or the walls. And just like you were talking about with all the immigrants, if they want to house these guys in the Vatican or in the White House or in some other facility, more power to them. But they're not doing that. They're sending them to little towns in South Texas and other places and telling those people to pay for them when they're encouraging them to come over. And of course, yes, we know the U.S. has a lot of hand in why people are fleeing these countries, but the U.S. needs to own up to it and stop going over to those countries in the first place and messing them up. And if they stop doing that, we wouldn't have half the problem that we have. I think even the leader of Syria came out, Assad, and he said the U.S. is the reason so many people are fleeing Syria. And he does have a point when he brings that up.
He's absolutely right. But most of them are invaders that came into Syria wanting to take over and get new houses and steal swimming pools, literally. And so they're now being kicked out. So we're getting a bunch of jihadis from all over the Middle East. I mean, 76% in one wave, 90+% in another are military-age men. It turns out they're mainly jihadis. And so this is the defeated al-Qaeda army coming into Europe. Just if you have logic, this guy that represents an organization worth hundreds of trillions, 177 million acres we know of, not mentioning Vatican company subsidiaries, more like 300 million. But I've done my research. And they have debunking articles going, it's the third largest owner, not the first. I mean,
oh, you're discredited, Alex.
Well, my point is they're not taking any of these, quote, immigrants or migrants that that in Syria would chop a Catholic's head off. I mean, this is sick. Go ahead.
Oh, just like you said, they want everybody else to take care of people that they're encouraging to come into various countries. And as I said in the last segment, yes, some people have a very legitimate reason for fleeing. But when you have people like the Pope, like Obama, who are encouraging them to go to certain places, it's really ultimately their responsibility to take care of those people, especially people like Obama or other people who are going into other countries and causing a conflict in the first place. And it's not just Obama. You have things with the Bushes as well. So it's not just him. But we have a long line of this going into other countries, messing them up, and then saying, oh, we can come here because we want to use your
and the very same politicians and the globalists that did that and that want our guns and then advertise the free anchor baby stuff are the ones destabilizing the country.
2015, a banner year for beheadings in Saudi Arabia. According to Amnesty International, beheadings have surpassed 175 at a rate of 1 every 2 days. Many had hoped that new Saudi King Salman would have diminished the brutality. Instead, he has accelerated it. The Independent reports the kingdom killed 102 convicted criminals in the first 6 months of 2015 alone, putting it on course to beat its 1995 record number for the calendar year of 192. Those killed included children under the age of 18 at the time of the offense and disabled people. In fact, the numbers have climbed to such a high level, the Saudis have placed a job posting for 8 new executioners. 28% of those that faced the executioner's blade were due to drug offenses, adultery, witchcraft, and of course sorcery. Many of those executed are not given legal representation and confess to their crimes after breaking under torture. The bodies of the executed are regularly displayed in public squares where the corpse is tied to a bag with the head of the violator inside of it, something the United Nations and Amnesty International have long demanded an end to. 21-year-old Ali Mohammed Bakir al-Nimr faces crucifixion and beheading for attending a demonstration against the Saudi regime when he was just 17 years old. Well then, America and the rest of the representatives of the modern world must be furious with Saudi government for these blatant displays of medieval barbarism. Wrong. Saudi Arabia has been chosen to head an important UN human rights panel, and State Department Deputy Spokesman Mark Toner responded with enthusiasm. Toner said, "We would welcome it. We're close allies." Close allies. According to witness testimony to the classified 28 pages of the 9/11 report.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Saudi government runs ISIS, runs Al-Qaeda. Does that mean that sometimes these groups don't attack Saudi Arabia to demand more goodies and more power and more weapons? Absolutely. But that's the real problem. There it is in the New York Times. Convicted terrorist claims Saudis funded Al-Qaeda and knew of plots down Air Force One. It's in the 28 pages that Saudi Arabia was running the hijackers, and they were in Saudi intelligence. Yeah, but let's go further than that. Under Clinton and Bush, they protected those hijackers when the FBI tried to stop them, when they were training, when people at the flight schools were suspicious. But what about how at least 5 of the 19 trained at U.S. military bases and were given spy training? The head of the Defense Language School, Colonel Stephen Butler, went public a week after 9/11 in the San Jose Mercury News and said, I don't know what's going on, but we train these guys at our bases. Muhammad Atta was in my class. Something's wrong. Of course. Of course. Do we know exactly what happened? No, but we know that this was allowed to happen, bare minimum. There's ABC News. Still secret, 28 pages that could change our understanding of 9/11. I've been told by the congressman on this show and military intelligence people on this show that've seen it, what it says. Senator Graham, former senator of Florida, 9/11 Commission, has said what's in it. We know what's in it.
Gathered today in this hallowed ground, the scene of unspeakable violence and pain. We ask you, your goodness, to give eternal light and peace to all who died here.
Eternal blessing. Today and every day, may we understand our shared mission to be, in the words of Pope Francis,
God of peace, bring your peace to our violent world.
Avavatu sahanao bunaktu sahaviryam karavavahi.
May God protect us. May God nourish us. May we work together.
Namo Buddhaya Jayang Verang Pasavati.
Victory begets enmity. The defeated dwell in pain.
ना के साडे पेशों सच्चों और सबको.
That truth is above everything, and the highest deed is truthful living.
Μακάρι η πτωχή το πνεύματι, ότι αυτόν εστίν η βασιλεία των ουρανών.
For theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn.
وإليك يرجع السلام.
Grant us to live with the salutation of peace, and lead us to your abode of peace.
El Male Rachamim.